about some of the cell organelles like mitochondria, plastids, and next cytoskeleton, cytoskeletal structures, and next, okay, we have discussed about cilia and flagella. And today we'll go with some other structures that are associated with the cell, that is a centrosome and centrioles. Some other cell organelles like a centrosome and centrioles, which are usually present only in animal cells but absent in plant cells. Okay, that is when you observe here, the centrosome and centrioles. Centrosome is an organelle usually containing two cylindrical structures called centrioles. Okay, centrosome is an organelle usually containing two cylindrical structures called centrioles. So when you observe the animal cell, okay, when you observe the animal cell, okay, when you observe the animal cells, we can see these structures. Okay, this one. Okay, we'll find two cylindrical structures that are present near the nucleus, which we are called centrioles, and these centrioles are enclosed inside the centrosome. Okay, inside the centrosome. That is what he's saying. Centrosome is an organelle usually containing two cylindrical structures called centrioles. So centrioles are present. There are two centrioles are present, or a pair of centrioles are present, and centrioles are enclosed inside the cell organelles called centrosome. And next, they are surrounded by a amorphous pericentriolar materials. Okay, amorphous. Amorphous means a powdery, like the okay powder. Okay, like a powder, the flour, okay, like a wheat flour or some other, okay, we'll find that like that powder, okay. These are surrounded by amorphous, okay, that is a powdery substance, pericentriolar material. That is, peri means is around the centriole, we'll find some powdery substance. Okay, they are surrounded by amorphous pericentriolar materials. Both the centrioles in a centrosome lie perpendicular to each other, in which each has an organization like the cartwheel. Okay, when you observe the centrosome, the centrioles are present. No, the centrioles are arranged at perpendicular to one another. That means at right angles to one another. The two centrioles are arranged at a 90 degrees angle with each other, or perpendicular to each other, in which each has an organization like the cartwheel. So when you observe the internal structure of the centrioles, okay, the centriole will look like a cartwheel like arrangement, like that of, okay, that means like this. Cartwheel, okay, that means peripheral microtubules and centrally located microtubules, and these centrally located microtubules are attached with the peripheral microtubules with the radial spokes. So as a result, okay, the internal structure of centrioles resemble like that of cartwheel. Okay, they are made up of 9 evenly spaced peripheral fibrils of tubulin protein. So we'll find 9 peripherally arranged tubular structure, okay, fibrils, which are made up of with a protein called tubulin. Okay, which are made up of with a protein called tubulin. And next, each of the peripheral fibril is a triplet. So when you observe the peripheral, okay, fibrils, the peripheral fibrils are 3 in number. They are triplet. They are made up of 3 tubular, okay, 3 myofibrils. The adjacent triplets are also linked. Okay, the adjacent triplets are also linked. So we'll find, okay, that means when you observe the internal structure of cilia and cilia or flagella, we are finding two fibril structures. Instead of two, we'll find three. And these three are attached with the adjacent with this dynein arms. These are called dynein arms. With the help of dynein arms, they are attached with the adjacent fibrils. Okay, here instead of two, we'll find three fibrils, and the adjacent triplets are attached with one another. So each of the peripheral fibril is a triplet. The adjacent triplets are also linked. The central part of the proximal region of the centriole is also proteinaceous and called the hub. Okay, we'll find the central structure. The central structure also of proteinaceous structures, and these are and this centrally located structure we are calling it as the hub, which is connected with the tubules of the peripheral triplets by the radial spokes made of protein. So this hub is connected with the peripheral triplets with the help of radial spokes. Okay, the hub which is present at the center of the centriole is attached with the or joined with the peripherally arranged triplets with the help of radial spokes. The centrioles from the basal body of cilia or flagella. Okay, the centrioles form the basal body of cilia or flagella and spindle fibers that give rise to spindle apparatus during cell division in animal cells. So, where this, what is the function of this? The centrioles are involved in the formation of basal bodies. Okay, from where the cilia or flagella will arise. Okay, that means there is a structure from where this flagella will be arising below the plasma membrane. That structure we call it as a basal body. Okay, this basal body is formed by the centrioles, from where this cilia or flagella are arising. And along with that, what is the other function of the centrioles means? The centrioles are playing a very important role in the formation of spindle fibers during the cell division in animal cells. Okay, in the animal cells, the spindle fibers which will form the spindle apparatus is formed from the centrioles that are enclosed inside the centrosome. So when you observe the centrosome is a cell organelle which encloses two centrioles. Okay, these centrioles are usually arranged at a perpendicular to one another. And next, when you observe the internal structure of this centriole, okay, the internal structure of centriole, okay, the electron microscopic structure of a centriole, what it reveals means, okay, the peripheral fibrils are three in number, so we say it as a triplet. The adjacent triplets are attached, are joined with the help of dynein arms. And next, we'll find a centrally located structure called hub. The hub is joined with the peripheral triplets with the help of radial spokes. Okay, that is. And next, when you observe the centrioles, what is the function of centrioles means? The centrioles are involved in the formation of basal bodies of cilia and flagella. Okay, that means the cilia and flagella will arise from the basal body, which are formed from the centrioles. That's why the basal bodies will have triplets, whereas the cilia and flagella are having only doublets as the peripheral microfibrils. Okay, and along with that, the centrioles are also involved in the formation of spindle fibers of the spindle apparatus, which are involved in the cell division of the animal cells. Okay, cell division of the animal cells. And next, okay, that is about this centrosome and centrioles. Anybody is having any doubt regarding the centriole and centrosome and centrioles? Anybody is having any doubt regarding the centrosome and centrioles?
No, sir.
Okay. And next, coming to the next cell organelle, that is the nucleus. Very, very important. Okay, nucleus as a cell organelle was first described by Robert Brown as early as 1831. Okay, that means during the in the year 1831, Robert Brown discovered and described the nucleus as a cell organelle. Okay, but later, the material of the nucleus stained by basic dyes was given the name chromatin by Fleming. Okay, but later, okay, that means he described only about the nucleus, a cell organelle, okay, which is present at the center of the cell, usually in animal cells. Okay, and this centrally located cell organelle, we are calling it as a nucleus, and that was done by the Robert Brown in the year 1831. But later, the components of the nucleus was studied by, that means the acidic nature of the the acidic nature of the chromatin material, which can be stained by basic dye. Okay, the nature of the genetic material is acidic, but it is stained by using some basic nature containing dyes, which we are calling it as a chromatin material. That was given by Fleming. Okay, that is. And next, when you observe the nucleus, okay, the interphase nucleus, that means if you study, that means when you observe, okay, when you observe the cell cycle is divided into two phases, division phase and the space between the two division phases we call it as interphase. That means between one cell division and the next cell division, the space we are calling it as interphase. So when you observe the nucleus, that means we can observe the nucleus during interphase. During division phase, usually the nucleus disappears. So when you observe the interphase, okay, the nucleus during the interphase, that is why we are saying the interphase nucleus. Nucleus of the cell when it is not dividing. So we can observe clearly the nucleus when the cell is not dividing. Okay, that's why the interphase nucleus is highly extended and elaborate nucleoprotein fibers called chromatin. Okay, chromatin, nuclear matrix, and one or more spherical bodies called nucleoli. Singular nucleolus. Okay, the interphase nucleus. The interphase nucleus, that is the cell when it is not dividing. At this stage, what we can observe inside the nucleus means we can observe some elaborate, that means highly extended, okay, nucleoprotein. That means the genetic material along with some proteins are associated. That is, the histone proteins are present. So along with the DNA, some histone proteins are also associated. That's why we are calling it as a nucleoprotein fibers. called chromatin. This nucleoprotein fibers which are long thread-like, okay, we are calling it as a chromatin. And the substance that is present enclosed inside the nucleus, we call it as a nuclear matrix, or we can say nucleoplasm. And next, okay, and we'll find one or more bodies called nucleoli. So these are the major components that we'll observe inside the nucleus. One is the chromatin material, and the second one is the matrix of the nucleus, that is nuclear matrix or nucleoplasm, and we'll find nucleoli, singular nucleolus. If only one spherical body is present, we say nucleolus. More than one is present means we'll find nucleoli. Usually we'll find more than one nucleoli. And next, if you want to study about the nucleus, okay, we can study only by using electron microscope. So electron microscopy has revealed that the nuclear envelope, which consists of two parallel membranes with a space between called a perinuclear space, forms a barrier between the materials inside the nucleus and that of the cytoplasm. So when you observe the nucleus, the nucleus is surrounded by a nuclear membrane. The nuclear membrane is a double membrane structure. That means we'll find two membranes, outer membrane and inner membrane. Okay, a minute space of 10 to 15 nanometers. Okay, a minute space of 10 to 15 nanometers will be present between the two membranes of the nucleus or nuclear membrane. And this space we are calling it as a perinuclear space. Okay, this nuclear membranes, the two nuclear membranes and the nuclear perinuclear space will form the barrier between the of the nucleus and the cytoplasm of the cell. So barrier, that means it is the border, the barrier, the nuclear membrane will act as a barrier between the cytoplasm and the nucleoplasm. Okay. And next, the outer membrane usually remains continuous. Okay, the outer membrane usually remains continuous with the endoplasmic reticulum and also bears ribosomes on it. So we are observing the nuclear membrane is having two membranes now, outer membrane and inner membrane. Usually the outer membrane will extend as a endoplasmic reticulum. And most of these endoplasmic reticulum possess ribosomes on it. So it forms a rough endoplasmic reticulum. Okay. And next, at a number of places, the nuclear envelope is interrupted by minute pores, which are formed by the fusion of its two membranes. These nuclear pores are the passages through which the movement of RNA and protein molecules takes place in both directions between the nucleus and the cytoplasm. So when you observe the nucleus, okay. Okay, when you observe the nucleus, here we can see the nucleus. So here the nucleus is having two membranes. This is the outer membrane and this is the inner membrane. And a small space of 10 to 50 nanometers, and that is called perinuclear space. Okay, this two membranes and this perinuclear space will act as a barrier between the nucleoplasm and cytoplasm. And next we can see here, the outer membrane usually extended as endoplasmic reticulum. And usually this endoplasmic reticulum consists of ribosomes. That's why it is called as rough endoplasmic reticulum. And when you observe the nuclear membrane, okay, a small will be there. Okay, that means small gaps. Okay, by the union of the outer membrane and the inner membrane of the nuclear membrane. Okay, small minute pores are developed. This one we can see, these minute pores are developed. And these, these pores, these are called nuclear pores. Okay, these nuclear pores will act as passages for the inward and outward movement of the components from nucleus into the cytoplasm and from cytoplasm into the nucleus. Okay, cytoplasm and nucleus. Okay, that is what we can see. Okay, that is what he is saying here. Okay, so we can see here. So electron microscopy has revealed that the nuclear envelope, which consists of two parallel membranes with a space called space of 10 to 50 nanometers, okay, called the perinuclear space, forms a barrier between the materials present inside the nucleus and that of the cytoplasm. And the outer membrane usually remains continuous with the endoplasmic reticulum and also bears ribosomes on it. At a number of places, the nuclear envelope is interrupted by minute pores. At a number of places, the nuclear envelope is interrupted by minute pores, which are formed by the fusion of its two membranes. And these nuclear pores are the passages through which movement of RNA and protein molecules takes place in both directions between the nucleus and the cytoplasm. Okay, these nuclear pores are the passages through which movement of RNA and protein molecules takes place in both directions between the nucleus and the cytoplasm. Normally, there is only one nucleus per cell. Okay, usually we'll find only one nucleus in each cell. But there are some cells, a little bit exceptions are there. Okay, variations in the number of nuclei are frequently observed. Normally, there is only one nucleus per cell, but there are some cells which will possess more than one nucleus also. That's what we're saying. Variations in the number of nuclei are also frequently observed. Okay, can you recollect names of organisms that have more than one nucleus per cell? Okay, for example, if you observe the paramecium, paramecium usually consists of more than one nucleus, macronucleus, micronucleus. Okay, mostly the ciliates. Okay, ciliates. Okay, ciliates. Okay, ciliates like paramecium, verticella, balantidium. Okay, all these organisms possess more than one nucleus. And next, there are some cells which possess more than one nucleus. Okay, when you observe the tapetal cells, okay, when you observe the anther, the wall of the anther, the wall of the anther consists of tapetum. And the cells are called tapetal cells. And the cells are called tapetal cells. When you observe these tapetal cells, these tapetal cells possess more than one nucleus usually. Okay, so and okay, some possess more than one nucleus, but some mature cells even lack nucleus. Okay, some cells, the cells are living, but still they do not have nucleus. For example, if you take erythrocytes, RBC or erythrocytes of many mammals, and sieve tube cells of vascular plants and sieve tube cells. Okay, while we are studying about anatomy of flowering plants, okay, we have come across the sieve tubes. Sieve tube cells do not have nucleus. Okay, but they are always associated with the companion cells. Okay, the nucleus of the companion cells will controls the activities of the sieve tube cells. So that is erythrocytes of many mammals and sieve tube cells of vascular plants do not have, but still they are living. Okay, would you consider these cells as living? Yes, these cells are considered as living because they consist of cytoplasm, which is the site for different metabolic activities. Cytoplasm is the site of metabolic activities. Okay, while we are discussing about the characteristics of living, we come across this one. Metabolism is the very important characteristic feature. Metabolism is the very important characteristic feature of the living. So those cells which will perform metabolic activities, those cells are considered as living, even though they do not have nucleus, but they possess other cell organelles like mitochondria and all other. Okay, and they perform metabolic activities. That's why they were considered as the living. They were considered as the living. Okay, that is. And next, coming to the components that are present inside the nucleus. So the nuclear matrix or the nucleoplasm. So the nuclear matrix is also called nucleoplasm. Okay, contains nucleolus and chromatin material. Okay, what this nucleoplasm or nuclear matrix will consist of means it consists of nucleolus and chromatin. Okay, nucleolus and chromatin. And the nucleoli are spherical structures. Okay, the nucleoli are spherical structures present in the nucleoplasm. Okay, the nucleoli are spherical structures present in the nucleoplasm. Okay. The nucleoli are spherical structures present in the nucleoplasm. And what the nucleolus consists of? The content of nucleolus is continuous with the rest of the nucleoplasm, and it is not a membrane bound structure. Okay, nucleolus is not a membrane structure. The components that are present in the nucleolus are continuous with the nucleoplasm of the nucleus. So what will happen, or what is the function of this nucleolus means? It is a site for the active ribosomal RNA synthesis. So that means that means the nucleolus is the site for the synthesis of RNA, especially of the ribosomes. The RNA that is associated with the ribosome, that is called ribosomal RNA. So the nucleolus is the active site for the synthesis of ribosomal RNA. Okay, because this RNA we know very well, the ribosomes are involved in protein synthesis. Okay, continuously, okay, continuously the proteins has to be synthesized in our body to bring different metabolic activities. So, okay, so that ribosomes, okay, the RNA that is associated with the ribosomes is synthesized in the nucleolus. Okay, it is a site for the active ribosomal RNA synthesis. Okay, larger and more numerous nucleoli are present in the cells, actively carrying out a protein synthesis. So that means when you observe here, large and more numerous nucleoli are present in cells, actively carrying out a protein synthesis. Okay, 1 minute, ma. I will come back. Okay. So when you observe here, so the nucleolus is the site for the active synthesis of ribosomal RNA. At the same time, okay, we'll find okay, it is also the active site for the synthesis of proteins. Okay, that is required for this formation of ribosomes. So the larger and more numerous nucleoli are present in the cells, actively carrying out a protein synthesis. That means those cells which are actively involved in protein synthesis, in those cells will find two or more number of nuclei. And the nuclei, okay, the nucleolus are also, okay, larger in size. Okay, we'll find larger and more numerous nucleoli, okay, in the cells which are actively carrying out protein synthesis. Okay, that is. And next, coming to the structure present in the nucleoplasm, you may recall that the interphase nucleus has a loose and indistinct network of nucleoprotein fibers called chromatin. So this chromatin is present in the nucleoplasm. So when you observe the interface consists of a loosely arranged indistinct network, like a network, okay, like a network, the nucleoprotein fibers are present, which we call it as a chromatin. But during different stages of cell division, cells show structured chromosomes in place of the nucleus. Okay, but at the time of cell division, the nucleus or the nuclear membrane will be disappeared. Okay, which, okay, we'll discuss in detail about while we are discussing about cell cycle and cell division. Okay, when you observe at the time of cell division, the cell, okay, the cell loses its nuclear membrane. But what happens means the chromatin material is condensed. Okay, it is broken down into, okay, the respective chromosomes. So in the place of nucleus, we'll find chromosomes which are formed from the chromatin material. So these chromosomes are distinctly observed very clearly during the cell division. Okay, that is. And next, when you observe the chromatin, okay, chromatin contains a DNA and some basic proteins called histones, some non-histone proteins, and also RNA. Okay, when you observe the chromatin contains DNA and some basic, that means the proteins which are having basic nature, not acidic nature. Mostly they are basic in nature. Why? Because the DNA is acidic in nature and the protein is basic in nature, so they can form a strong bond so that the DNA structure can be maintained and the chromatin material structure is maintained. So that's why the chromatin contains DNA and some basic proteins. Okay, and these basic proteins we call it as histones or histone proteins. Histone proteins. When the genetic material is present in the form of chromatin, but when that is during the interphase. But at the time of cell division, the chromatin material is transformed into chromosomes by undergoing condensation. Okay, when it is transformed into chromosomes at that time, what happens means, along with the histone proteins, there are some other proteins called non-histone proteins are also associated with the chromosomes for the formation of chromosome structure. Okay, that means because during interphase, okay, the genetic material is present in the form of long thread coiled structure as a single long thread coiled structure called chromatin. But at the time of cell division, the chromatin material is condensed to a small structures called chromosomes. So for this condensation of chromatin material into chromosomes, it needs some extra proteins. And those proteins we are calling it as non-histone proteins. Non-histone proteins. Okay, non-histone proteins. That's what chromatin contains DNA and some basic proteins called histones and some non-histone proteins and okay, and also RNA. Okay, some amount of RNA because the RNA continuously getting synthesized from the DNA now by a process called transcription. The process of synthesis of the process of synthesis of RNA from DNA we call it as a transcription. We call it as a transcription. So this RNA is inside. And next, a single human cell has approximately 2-meter long thread of DNA distributed among its 46 or 23 pairs of chromosomes. So that means, okay, during the cell, we'll find 23 pairs of chromosomes. Okay, after the cell division is completed and all these chromosomes come together and form as a long thread of chromatin. Okay, that chromatin will be a little bit smaller in size. When chromosomes are very small, okay, and these chromosomes will decondense and transforms into chromatin material. But when you observe, this chromatin consists of DNA now. When you take out the DNA and place it as a linear structure, okay, the length of the DNA in case of a human cell, okay, if you take the total DNA and place it as a linear structure, the length of the DNA molecule comes about 2.2 meters. Approximately 2.2 meters length. How this, okay, this means, okay, this 2.2 meter length of DNA molecule is getting incorporated inside the nucleus, which is of 10 to 30 micrometers size. Okay, this is called okay, this fitting of this 2.2 meter DNA molecule in that small nucleus. Okay, this process we call it as a packaging of DNA helix. That we'll study in +2 while we are studying about a molecular basis of inheritance in detail. Okay, this condensation of okay, this DNA molecule from 2.2 meter to that chromatin material which can fit inside the nucleus. This process we call it as a packaging of DNA helix. or DNA packaging. And how this packaging will occur, that one will study in detail in +2 while we are studying about molecular basis of inheritance, the chapter 6 of +2. Okay, that is. And next, coming to this. And next, okay, that means at the time of cell division, the chromatin material is condensed to form chromosomes. And each chromosome, okay, when you observe every chromosome, visible only in dividing cell. That means the chromosomes are observed only at the time of cell division. During interphase, usually we don't find chromosomes. The chromosomes will undergo decondensation and converted into chromatin material during cell division. When enters into interphase, from cell division to interphase, the chromosomes are condensed, okay, decondensed to form chromatin material. So if you want to observe chromosomes, okay, we can observe only during the cell division. So every chromosome visible only in dividing cells essentially have a primary construction or primary construction or the centromere on the sides of which disc-shaped structures called kinetochores are present. Okay, that is, we can see here. Okay, this is the chromosome. Okay, almost all the chromosomes consist of a primary construction. Definitely, every chromosome consists of a primary construction. Okay, this is a primary construction. We call it as a centromere. We call it as a centromere. The primary construction we call it as a centromere. Okay, this is the construction region. This is the centromere. Okay, and when you observe this centromere, on the sides of this centromere, we'll find disc-shaped structures. This disc-shaped structures we call it as a kinetochores. Okay, this disc-shaped structures we call it as a kinetochores. And next, centromere holds two chromatids of a chromosome. Okay, each chromosome consists of two chromatids, and these two chromatids are held by the centromere. Okay, so centromere holds the two chromatids of a chromosome. Okay, and next, based upon the position of the centromere or primary, based on the position of centromere or primary constriction in the chromosome, okay, the chromosomes are classified into 4 types. Okay, based on the position of the centromere or primary constriction, the chromosomes can be classified into 4 types. That is metacentric. Metacentric. The metacentric chromosome has a middle centromere forming 2 equal arms of this chromosome. Okay, that means the chromosomes are described as metacentric. Okay, the chromosomes are described as metacentric. If the centromere or primary constriction is present at the center of the chromosome, dividing the chromosome into 2 equal halves of chromatids. That means the chromatids are of equal size on either side of the centromere. Okay, such chromosomes are described as metacentric chromosomes. And the second one is submetacentric. Submetacentric. That means if the centromere is present slightly away from the center, in which one chromatid is slightly longer and one chromatid will be slightly short. So short arm and one longer arm. So as the centromere is present slightly away from the centrome, okay, away from the center of the chromosome. So we'll find one larger arm and one shorter arm. Such a type of chromosome submetacentric. So we can see here. So the submetacentric chromosome has centromere slightly away from the middle of the chromosome, resulting into one shorter arm and one longer arm. And next, the third one, that is acrocentric. In acrocentric, the centromere is present close to one end. That means one is very long arm. One chromatid will be very long with long arm, and one chromatid with very short arm. Okay. In case of acrocentric chromosome, the chromosome is situated close to its end, forming one extreme short and one very long arm. Okay, such a type of centromeres. Okay, such a type of chromosomes, we are calling it as a acrocentric. And the fourth type is telocentric. Here the centromere is present at the terminal. That means at the tip of the chromosome. Okay, we'll find only one chromatid. The other chromatid is okay. That is, we can see here. Here, the first picture we can see. This is the metacentric. This is the metacentric chromosome. Here we can see the centromere is present at the center. One arm, okay, and both the chromosomes are of same size. Here we can see the presence of secondary constriction. This is not called, okay, here we can see the secondary constriction. This is not considered as the centromere, okay, and the chromatid that is present after the secondary constriction, we call it as satellite. Okay, the chromatid that is associated with the secondary constriction, we call it as satellite. Okay, here we have to take into consideration this satellite along with the normal chromatid. Okay, if we take this one, these two lengths are similar. So that's why it is called as a metacentric. And here we can see the submetacentric chromosome. Okay, here the the centromere is slightly away from the center. That's why we got a slightly longer and a slightly shorter arm. That's why we are calling it as a submetacentric. And here we can see the acrocentric. Acrocentric, that means we'll find very short arm of one chromatid and another one as a long chromatid. That is called okay, acrocentric. And the fourth one is a telocentric. We can see here the centromere is almost present at the tip with a very short arm. Very short arm. And that is called telocentric. So we'll metacentric, submetacentric, acrocentric, and telocentric chromosomes. So that is what we can see here. So sometimes a few chromosomes have non-staining secondary constrictions at a constant location. This gives the appearance of a small fragment called the satellite. So if that means some chromosomes are having the secondary constriction. The primary constriction is the centromere. That is definitely present in all the chromosomes, no exceptions. but some chromosomes may or may not possess the secondary construction. If the secondary construction is present, okay, the rest, okay, the okay, that chromatid we call it as a satellite. Okay, okay, if the satellite is present, then we can observe the secondary construction. Okay, that is. And next, along with this, we find something called microbodies. Many membrane-bound minute vesicles called microbodies that contain various enzymes are present in both plant and animal cells. Okay, we'll find a certain membrane-bound minute vesicular structures along with associated with the endoplasmic reticulum or Golgi complex. Okay, like this, we'll find a small membrane-bound vesicles. These membrane-bound vesicles we call it as microbodies. Okay, they contain various enzymes for transportation, and these are present in both the plant and animal cells. Okay, they are present in both plant and animal cells. Okay, that is about the cell, the function, okay, the functional unit of life or the structural unit of life. Anybody is having any doubt? Anybody is having any doubt up to now? Okay, regarding the chromosome. Okay, you have to understand that chromosome structure because in the later we can come across that one. Okay, during cell cycle and cell division and in biomolecules. Okay, we'll come across all these some concepts. Okay, if you are having any doubts, you can ask now only.